And the song that my niece is saying, that the littlest fire of love. If you listen to the words of that song. And what I'm been considering is who is indeed is Yahshua, and how do we emulate Yahshua? What's the greatest character attribute that Yahshua Messiah displayed? Now we all speak of following the example of Yahshua Messiah, and most people think that following the example of Yahshua Messiah is obedience. You know, Yahshua was not without sin; he obeyed his Father in all things. The other is to, when we talk about walking in his ways, is to live a life of righteousness, to keep the commandments of Yahweh, to be faithful in all things, and these things are very important. But the greatest character attribute that we have to consider is his humility. Humility. Yahshua the Messiah was very humble. When Yahshua emptied himself, and I don't know, sometimes when I think about that, at times I understand it in kind of in a shallow sense, that he gave up everything and he came. When you understand what he possessed with the Father, he completely emptied himself and gave everything up. Everything up. He put himself at risk. Remember, he was tempted in all things. And he did die. So he gave everything up, took on the form of a servant, and then he walked this earth. Now remember, all things were created through him, so he in effect subjected himself to his own creation. The ultimate act of humility to the Father, before the Father, for us. So, I would describe the attribute that Yahshua Messiah displayed as selflessness. And so that's what I want to kind of consider, because it plays into this. The hardest thing to do is change. Human nature is selfish. That is the attribute of the adversary. He wanted to do something, take to himself something that wasn't his. He wanted to take the throne. And so the nature of man, remember we discussed that the law of sin in the flesh. The law of sin is in the flesh. And so sin basically is the ultimate expression of selfishness. Yahshua Messiah was selfless in all that he did. So let's go to Philippians, where the description of this character trait in Yahshua Messiah really stands out. So, and many of you are familiar with it. It's Philippians 2, and we'll read just verses 1 through 11. Now, this isn't the only place, but this here kind of brings out things I wanted to mention. And to keep it in context, we just start at verse 1. Read it all the way down to 11. If there is, therefore, any exhortation in the Messiah, if any consideration of love, if any fellowship of the Spirit, if any tender mercies and compassions, make full my joy, that you may be of the same mind, having the same love, being of one accord, of one mind, doing nothing through faction or through vainglory, but in lowliness of mind, each counting the other better than himself. You have to keep that in your mind as we continue reading. Each counting other better than himself. Not looking each of you to his own things, but each of you also to the things of others. Have this mind in you, which was also in the Messiah Yahshua, who existing in the form of Elohim, counted not the being on an equality with Yahweh. Counting not the being on an equality with Yahweh, a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant, being made in the likeness of men, and being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, becoming obedient even to death. Yes, the death of the torture state. cross. Therefore also Yahweh highly exalted him and gave to him the name which is above every name, that in the name of Yahshua every knee should bow, of things in heaven and things on earth and under the earth, and that every tongue should confess Yahshua Messiah as Master, to the glory of Yahweh the Father. So, looking each of you to his own, not to your own things, but to things of each other. For the selflessness of Yahshua Messiah is brought forth in this, and we are exhorted to be of the same mind, to be of the same character, to follow in that example. When we consider selflessness, in the word itself, selfless, others first, Yahshua the Messiah, when he gave up what he possessed above, when he emptied himself and put himself at risk, he died for imperfect man. He died because he loved what Yahweh's works. And so I'm emphasizing this because when it comes to us dealing with one another, the song that my niece is saying, when we love one another, we have to consider others first before ourselves. In the body of Messiah, in the various assemblies and all, there are many sincere brethren, and there are many brethren who do good things. But just as in obedience to the law, it's almost like a checklist. You know, I did this for so and so, and I did this for that person. I did this, and so it's like a person wants acknowledgement for the good works that they do. Just like when people keep, they keep the Sabbath and say, yes, I do this and this and this and this, and it's almost like, they keeping the Sabbath and go down this list of things, and it's like it's like they're seeking an acknowledgement that I'm indeed a righteous person. Like, I truly love Yahweh. But that's not how it's done. Yahweh knows the heart of each individual. Yahweh knows us all. So what is it? We come through. Our fight is against what we were just discussing this morning, against our nature, the nature of man. And sadly, because of the choice that was made by our forefather and mother, that this human nature was introduced. And so therefore we're all subject to it. So in following the example of Yahshua the Messiah, we have to think less of ourselves and more of others, and then let Yahweh fulfill our needs. I'm kind of like what Brother Jerry said, you have something set, and you start talking, and all of a sudden, I want to stick to what I want to say, but all of a sudden now my heart and my mind are going, okay, go this way. But I don't want to seem to get things a little confused, so I was kind of divided whether I should go in the way of love and talk strictly about love, what that means. And that's going to be incorporated into this, but it's also going to talk about trust. Trust is very important in a relationship, and among the brethren, it's very key. Just now we went around the room and everybody was asking about prayer, what to pray for. Not what to pray for, but what prayer should that's on a person's heart and mind, is something to consider. So I'm going to divert just a little bit into trust before I go back to love. Because all of this, again, comes down to self-denial, selflessness. A friend of mine, a dear brother in the faith, one year at the feast, said, what we're going to do one evening is we're going to have a prayer service. And he said, this is a trust. We're opening our hearts before one another. He says, this is not to gather a little tidbit of information on somebody to gossip about. So, we all, before we had that evening, several of us were sitting around and talking about it. And we realize the importance of that expression of trust and love for one another and trust in one another. And so a few evenings later we came together, and it wasn't required that you pray out loud, but if you wanted to have a moment of silence or whatever, our hearts were supposed to be joined together in this trust to pray with one another and for one another and for whatever requests that they have. So many people chose to go ahead and open up. And it had to be the most binding spiritual moment with brethren I've ever experienced. And you felt the Spirit of Yahweh move. That was a true moment of love and trust among brethren. And I would that would happen among everyone. So that got me to thinking more about what it means to follow Yahshua Messiah. So anyway, let's go to Romans. Well, hold on just a moment. Before we go to Romans, I just want to point out a couple things here. He said, have this mind in you, and thinking of others is better than yourself is very important. We all have fallen short. We all have sinned. And when we think about, when we remember that at all times, I say often, what separates me from Joe Blow out on the street doing terrible things? What separates me from them? You know, I'm flesh and blood, I'm a human being just like they are. But that I have that seed of knowledge, which gives me just that slight advantage. But should I take it for lightly, take it for granted? You know, that I can corrupt that. It can be taken away, and I can be just like them. So when we consider ourselves not to be better than anybody else, it keeps us humble. Humility is a key. Humility is key to this. So let's go over here to Romans real quick. Romans 15. I'm sure it's kind of a groundwork, and again, I'm kind of sharing the things that I'm working with the study, and I hope that it'll be able to give you something to consider, because it is very important for us to try to implement this example that Yahshua has given us in our lives. The two things when Yahshua was asked, what is the greatest commandment? Yahshua said, love Yahweh, love your neighbor as yourself, your fellow man. He didn't say, keep this holy day. He didn't say, keep this particular commandment. You have to do this. He said, love Yahweh, love your fellow man. In Scripture, we're told that love covers a multitude of sins. We're also told in Scripture that we're not saved. We're not saved through the keeping of the law. The keeping of the law is our expression of love to Almighty Yahweh. As children that love, a child, a child loves their parent. The father says, go do such and such and such. Yes, Dad. Whatever instruction a parent may give a child will do it because they love that parent. We are supposed to be as children. And so we keep Yahweh's commandments as our expression of love to Him. But how are we saved? And we're told that we're saved through grace, and we're saved through faith in Yahshua Messiah. So, let's go ahead with this 15. I'll continue with Romans 15. 1 through 4. And it's a consideration. Many of us have been in this walk for many years, and some just a few, but nevertheless, all of us being in this walk are always older than those who are just entering or have not yet come in. Now we that are strong ought to bear the infirmities of the weak, and not to please others. Let each one of us please his neighbor for that which is good, to edify, to build up, to strengthen. For the Messiah also did not please himself, selfless. But as it is written, the reproaches of them that reproach you fell upon me. Whatever things were written before were written for our learning, that through patience and through comfort of the scriptures we might have hope. The Messiah did not please himself. He did these things for us. He bore these things for us. And so we, bearing others in patience, love, kindness, mercy, bring them along. I kind of jumped ahead of myself, and it's a little out of sequence with this one, and I apologize, but it'll have a little more of impact as I go along here. What I want to try to bring forth in this is that how do we, it's not just like serving one another, but it's a change that has to take place in our heart. And when we, what is it that, how far can we go in following that example? When a person has very little, and yet they see somebody that has less than they do, that have a need, are we willing to take what we have and give it to them? Does that put us, that'll put us almost in the same place as them? If we have half a bottle of water, somebody that has none and they're very thirsty, and you go and give them that, do you give your last bit? Do you give, what is it that you would do for others? Remember, Yahshua Messiah gave up everything. And so, what are we willing to do to follow Yahshua Messiah? We can go to Mark and see what Yahshua said to the young man who said, "What must I do?" Mark 10, I didn't write this down, so just I think it's 30, Make it a little. I'm sorry? 17. Mark 10:17. Yes, that's it. Thank you very much. It's kind of on the fly. It just came to my mind. Mark 10:17. Thank you, sister. And he was going forth into the way. There ran one to him and kneeled to him and asked him, "Good teacher, what shall I do that I may inherit eternal life?" And Yahshua said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good save one, even Yahweh. You know the commandments. Do not kill, do not commit adultery, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not defraud, honor your father and your mother." And he said to him, "Teacher, all these things have I observed from my youth." And Yahshua looked upon him, loved him, and said to him, "One thing you lack. Go, sell whatever you have, and give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me." Empty yourself. He apparently was a wealthy man. He doesn't mean to put yourself into poverty, but he's saying the things that are important, put these things out. Put these things off. Whatever you hold to yourself. I told my wife, she likes making gifts for people. She's more giving than I am, and she can tell you I can be a little stingy. and it's not stingy in the negative. I mean, I was raised to consider things. I don't buy. I'm not an impulsive buyer. I wish shop. What I do is when I'm broke, I do all my shopping. I go look at this, I go look at that, say when I get money, I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get that, and as soon as I get money, I can't think of a thing I want to buy. So but what is saying here is the things that are to empty yourself, the things that seem important, whatever, you give to others, you put forth for other people. Yahshua was saying, was right here in this instruction is what Yahshua did. He gave up everything he possessed. He gave up everything that he had for the sake of others. So, who is your neighbor? Well, your neighbor is anyone that's in your area, whether it's your physical house, or let's say we're here in temporary dwellings. That's our neighbor next door. That's our neighbor next door. If a need comes up, each one of us must step up, whatever it is. We're camping. We have very little. But if we were going to the store and somebody was along the road and had a need, we would have to take what we have and give for their need, for their benefit, to take care of them. Because we have a responsibility as Yahweh's servants, you see, to emulate Yahshua Messiah in our lives. And we cannot have an expectation of reward from any man. But our reward comes from Yahweh. He said to this young man here, your treasure. You shall have treasure in heaven. The accumulation of material things. When Yahweh blesses somebody with some material things, is it for themselves or is it for something to come? Something that Yahweh, sometimes we're proven by the things we're blessed with. If Yahweh gives all of a sudden you have a windfall or something is given to you and you really have a plenty already, do you store it to yourself? Or do you say, perhaps we see? We have to think that way. We have to be selfless as Messiah was. Going towards a little bit towards love. We'll go to 1 Corinthians. Well, 1 Corinthians. Going to thinking of others, not seeing yourself being any better than others, but this speaks to the body. And sadly, Brother Jerry and I were speaking a little bit this morning about how some people are puffed up with the knowledge. They receive truth, they get a little puffed up and see themselves a little better. And sadly, even among some of the assemblies, that they see themselves as ahead. But in 1 Corinthians 12:23, it's speaking about the body. We know that Yahshua is the head, but he didn't start off as the head. He started off emptying himself, taking on the form of a servant, and even subjecting to himself. It's an amazing thought that he's subjecting himself to his own creation. For us, it's an amazing thing to consider. And those parts, I'll just cut in already in the thought, and those parts of the body which we think to be less honorable, upon these we bestow honor, abundant honor. And our uncomely parts have more abundant comeliness. Whereas our comely parts have no need, but Yahweh tempered the body together, giving more abundant honor to that part which is lacked. Now, I'm sorry, again, in this study, these are kind of the side notes that I have in the main study I want to do on what it means to follow Yahshua Messiah, to follow him in what way. And it comes down to not thinking of ourselves better than others, to see others as better than ourselves, to humble ourselves, to serve one another, So in the body we see a problem where there are people, there are brethren who see themselves as being a little better than others. Recently I was speaking to somebody, a sister in the faith, and she was telling me she heard from some people that had been, that we used to worship with many years ago. And she said that they were in North Carolina when the storm hit, that's where they live. And she said that they were praying that Yahweh would preserve them, that Yahweh would turn the storm and so on. And in that comment that she said, but she knows that the prayers of the Christians were heard. And it's sad to say that at times that kind of thinking is not good, because Many of us have come out of Christianity, have we not? Did we not, at some point in our lives, pray not knowing the name of Yahweh? We prayed not worshiping on Sabbath, but then yet, did we not have prayers answered? Mm-hmm. You see, we have prayers answered. Why is that? Because Yahweh knows the hearts of every individual. Yahweh knows who is seeking truth. He knows who is desiring to know his ways. And so, in our ignorance, Yahweh led us. He answered our prayers and directed us. So, there are people who are of the body who are not where we are yet. But Yahweh knows his own. Yahshua said, I know my own, and his sheep hear his voice. But there are people that are yet out there that are being called. But if we see ourselves as better, and sadly sometimes do, people say, oh, that person's a Sunday worshiper, I'm not going to talk to him. They keep everybody at arm's length. But if we're following the example of Yahshua decide, what was Yahshua accused of? Yahshua was accused of sitting with sinners. Ooh, he cannot be a righteous man, you see. But who are the ones who actually need the help? Who are the ones who need the position? Who are the ones that need the answers? You see? But if we see ourselves as being better than others, we're not going to be that light, that witness, that representative, that sometimes it's not even the words we speak, but how we live our lives. What we do. I haven't heard the story yet. I don't know if one of you guys, even one of you noticed, if you were keeping the Sabbath, this person doesn't go to Sabbath because they don't seem to be good. Sometimes that's what happens is a neighbor notices a pattern. They see you going to work. Myself, I go to work sometimes Sunday morning. I work 6 days sometimes. And but Sabbath, people will see me come out of the house dressed, carrying my Bible, get in the car, gone a few hours, come back, go in the house, and nothing goes on until after sunset. People will see, and then they may ask, what are you doing? And so the thing is that if we think of others think of ourselves not being better than others, then we can actually serve. We can actually be a help to others. And it's especially those, first to the household of faith. We have to be a light and help one another, encourage one another. And we definitely cannot be a servant to one another if we're seeing, even within the body, ourselves being better than the other. So I try to encourage everybody, look, if we're going to be followers, worshipers of Yahweh, true worshipers of Yahweh, and following the example of the Messiah, Yahshua, then there's a saying, Yahweh first, others second, self last. And so when we put this into practice, then we can actually be true followers of Yahshua the Messiah. And so I would just want to encourage everybody to kind of keep these things in mind, because when we put this into practice, then we can actually go to one another. What does Scripture say? Confess your sins one to another. It doesn't mean that I can go and find somebody in another state and say, hey, I did this terrible. What it is one, where we can confess if we've done a wrong to a brother that he's not aware of. We can go and say, hey, I did this thing. And the brother will respond, not with anger and so on, but if they, looking at their brothers, saying, I've been there too, I like you. Seeing others is better than yourself. And recognizing what Yahshua has done for you, the mercy that has been extended to you, grace that has been extended, then our whole conduct towards one another will most definitely take on a greater form of love. We're supposed to love one another. We're supposed to love our fellow man. If we can't love ourselves as brethren, how on earth are we going to love people in the world? But yet that's what Yahshua did. So we have to begin working on ourselves. The hardest thing to do is change. But that's what's required of us. Yahshua has given us the Spirit. The Spirit of Yahweh is a spirit of remembrance, to remember His Word, but it's also the spirit of change, because it's going to change us from the ways of the flesh to the ways of the Spirit. If we don't think that we can change, this is an exercise. This is just we're just here occupying space. We're here because we believe that we can change. We're here, we believe in the power of Almighty Yahweh's Spirit. So, that goes to what I was saying when I brought in the whole thing about trust. When we are able to go to our brethren, I've had to really learn how to accept criticism or even correction. A person comes to me and said, Robert, you did this thing. And, the human inclination is to deny. But the spirit way and the humble way is to accept. And so we have to come to that form of trust where we realize that brother is looking out for our salvation. Somebody's looking out for us. To be able to come. I use this example. Might be a little embarrassing, but my brother, many years ago, some cousins were kind of joking around and teasing. I think my brother heard it. So my brother came to me and said to me, Robert, he pulled me aside and said, Robert, he said, I just want you to know that you smell. Well, for the sting, who wants to be told that they smell? Nobody wants to hear that. We see ourselves as being, there's nothing wrong with me, but my brother came and told me, and the sting was like, ouch. But then I had to think about it. I said, thanks, Ray. He's looking out for me. It stung, but I had to accept that he was looking out for me. So I was able to make a correction. And so that's the way we should be with one another. And almost brought it. Well, people tend to, with their knowledge and understanding, tend to sometimes use it as a weapon. The word of Yahweh, and we were talking about this the other day, the word of Yahweh is indeed a weapon. It's a double-edged sword. But my personal opinion and belief, it's not for us to wield it quite that way as a weapon yet. We use it as a defensive. We have the defensive armor and everything, but it's also a defensive weapon right now. We use it just like Yahshua did when he resisted the adversary. He used the word as a defensive weapon, because the time for judgment is not yet. He says, I come not to judge. But sadly, there's a lot of people in the body that use it as a weapon. Why? Kind of to establish their own righteousness. Well, I know the Bible, I know the scriptures, and they use it, and instead of using it to direct and consider that a soldier on guard stands with his weapon, and let's say somebody comes and asks for directions. Well, a soldier on duty never relinquishes his weapon. But what he does is he takes that sword and he points and gives direction. You see, go this way, that way. Well, that's what we're supposed to do with the word of Yahweh. We're supposed to give direction to people. We wield that sword to give direction, not correction, and to not that type of correction. We do correct, we say we let a person know their sin, but too many people use the weapon to cut and stab and do harm, do injury. And so we have to humble ourselves before Almighty Yahweh, humble ourselves before one another, and then we're supposed to, we are our brother's keeper. And so I just want to leave that thought with you that we have a responsibility to follow Yahshua, and I think that that's one thing that we kind of haven't emphasized is the fact that he humbled himself and gave up everything, and we set ourselves last. Yahweh first, other second, self last, then we truly emulate the example that Yahshua the Messiah set. And so that's and that's why this here in Mark, and I thank you for reminding me of what it was, that when he gave that instruction to that young man, that was because he was saying, if you truly want this, he says that, go sell all you have, follow me. So I just encourage brethren to just do our best to follow Yahshua the Messiah. And again, I said, before I came up there, the three witnesses, the song that was sung, the two songs that the one the sister gave is who is Yahshua, and then this here. The hardest thing to do is to change. We must change, brethren. We have to be a reflection of Yahshua the Messiah. And so,
hallelujah.
I hope that I've given you something to consider and think about. Yes,
Sister gave me a verse that I thought would be perfect, and that's Proverbs 16:5.
Proverbs 16:5. Everyone that is good in heart is an abomination to Yahweh. Though hand join in hand, he shall not be unpunished. And proud in heart.
Proud.
Pardon?
Proud in heart.
Yeah, proud in heart. And a lot of times, like I said, people take their good works as a point of pride. They try to, to express their righteousness. Remember, it's the hidden things. It's the righteous things, the things done in secret. It's when you do things not to be seen of men. Let your good works, it'll be revealed, but it's not by you. It's not something that you do to be seen, but it's something that's done, and Yahweh will manifest it. And so, we have, and Yahshua did a lot of things that were done in public, but it wasn't for his honor and glory. He had to reveal the Father to people. He had to, when he did these things, he said, it's Yahweh through me. It's Yahweh who has done these things. So, but let us begin in the household of faith and then work our way out. And let us work on this true love, compassion, selflessness, and trust, and strengthen the body of Messiah, because that's what we're all to do. So may Yahweh bless you, and I pray that I give you something to consider. It's not about, I don't go into a real deep depth, but I do try to just present things to give people, because it is my prayer that I might be a help and encouragement to the brethren. I pray that I've been able to do that.
Did your job, brother.